Okay, Mary, you're all set.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Birchfield Penny Art Center's Book Club at the Center. My name is Mary Kozub, and I'm so excited that you're joining us this evening for tonight's presentation of Blooms and Doom, featuring cozy mystery author Barbara Early. While it seems that there are more and more book clubs every day throughout our community, as you know, Buffalonians are very well read. Ours is quite unique and very special, and that's because the authors are always here with us to celebrate their books, discuss their books. As many of you already know, our book club has been around for many years now. It was started as a docent initiative and has gone on to celebrate all of the good work that the authors of Buffalo are doing. When we were at the center pre-COVID era, we had the fun of meeting in person online and sharing a brownie or two and a couple glasses of wine or a cup of coffee. But now we're exclusively online through these Zoom meetings. And I have to thank Michaela Warros, who always makes these types of meetings possible. Before we begin, however, I would love to introduce you to Michaela, who will explain to you the mechanics of the evening. So Michaela?
All right, hi everyone. So as some of you are probably our regulars, so you're already familiar with this procedure, but tonight is being recorded. So this will be uploaded to our website tomorrow and you'll be able to view it there. If you don't have time to watch this full thing. This is also live on Facebook. So if you're there, you can use the comment section to ask questions to the author and I will ask them on your behalf. For those of you in the Zoom, please use the Q&A section to ask your questions and I will use that there. And the chat section is for you to say hello to the author. But please use the Q&A for your questions only. That's it.
Now I'd like to introduce tonight's facilitator, Cheryl Cantfield. Cheryl is a loyal book club attendee and often came to the Birchfield Penny Arts Center when we were in person. After discovering that we live about a mile away from one another, we've become good friends. I'm really delighted that she agreed to facilitate tonight's book club, and I'm delighted that you're here. And Cheryl, I'm going to turn things over to you to introduce tonight's author. Cheryl?
Okay, well, good evening. Tonight we have Barbara Early, aka Beverly Allen, joining us, and she is the author of a delightful book, mystery Bloom and Doom, which is the first in the series of bridal bouquet shop mysteries. So it's very exciting to read her book as one of many. And welcome, Barbara.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I just have to ask a question before you get started. Did you have a place in mind when you designed or created the town of Ramble in your book?
Well, there's actually a story behind that. The publisher had wanted a story like this set in Virginia. So I had contacted my friends in Virginia and I said, I need a small town because cozy mysteries tend to be in small, idyllic towns. And it needs to and here comes my cat. It needs to have that small town feel, like everybody knows each other. There's like a central main street, a good place to start a business. And they sent me a number of suggestions, and one of them was the town of Berryville, Virginia. And my husband had done some business in the Washington, D.C. area, not too far away. And so I scoped it out and realized I could drive to Berryville in about an hour and check it out. And so I did. One day I went with him on a trip. I used his business car while he was in meetings, drove to Berryville, got to town and found a visitor's welcome center. Okay, here's a great place to start. So I went in there and I said, okay, this is going to sound strange, but I'm writing a book and I need to know a little bit about the town. Oh, let me help you. And I stood there gleaning information from this visitor center guy for about an hour, just jotting down information about everything in the town, how big it is, how the different festivals and the things that went on at the town, you know, the monks in the hills that make wine and all this other stuff that some of it got into the books and some of it didn't. And then I said, okay, I'm going to go explore the town now. So I walked down a block and there was a perfect flower shop. And so I walked into the flower shop and I said, this is going to sound strange, but I'm writing a book. Oh, yes, let me talk to you. And so I talked with her for about, oh, maybe half an hour. And in fact, it's funny because as an author, I can't design my book covers, but I can give some input and send them pictures of things that I'd like to see. And they took a picture that I stole from this flower shop's website from a photograph from the inside of the shop showing the idyllic Virginia Main Street through the window. And I sent them that as inspiration, and they came up with, I'm going to see if you can see this. They came up with this, and you can see the street through the windows and the flower shop inside. It's not an exact copy of the picture, but it just captures a lot of that same feeling. Well, then I found the police station. So I stopped in the police station. This is going to sound strange, but I'm writing a book. And oh, she gave me a tour of the whole police station, showed me everything, talked about how many people were on their force, what kinds of cases they had. They'd never had a murder that they can recall in recent history. But, you know, the detectives, there were, you know, X number of detectives, X number of people, and they dealt mainly with this, that, and the other. And she gave me her contact information if I had any questions. And just everywhere I went in this town, everybody was like, "Oh, well, yeah, let me tell you." And I probably was there for about 5 hours just talking to people, and I left feeling really good. Had all the contact information, so if I had questions later, hey, what do you call that fizzy drink you get in a can? Because in some places it's pop, in some places it's soda, in some places it's Cokes. And so whenever I had a question of what they call a certain thing in that town, I could just you know, email them and they would make sure I got it right. So it was just a great experience. So there is no Ramble, Virginia, but it's similar in geography and location to Berryville, Virginia, which is a very nice place with really friendly people.
So you learned a lot about flowers and the tools of a florist. Did you learn those all at the shop, or was there another way that you learned all that?
There's a story behind that too. I had submitted a completely different novel to a literary agent in the hopes of getting it published. She emailed me back and said, well, I don't think we can publish this. We can find a publisher for this for XYZ reasons. But I do love your voice. We have a publisher looking for someone to write a book series that's set in with the main character that's a bridal bouquet shop florist. Would you be interested? Now, the thing about me is I have serious allergies to flowers. My husband has learned not to buy me flowers. Flowers are not a welcome gift for me. Candy is okay. Candy is welcome. There's a lot of welcome things, but not flowers, because if I get in the same room with flowers, my eyes start watering, they get itchy. It's just terrible. But when a literary agent said, do you think you can write a book focusing on flowers? The answer is yes, because you don't say you can't write that book to a literary agent. So I found a local florist here, Brighton Eggert florist is it Tonawanda? Has a floral design school. It's not very big. I think it's mostly teaching amateurs, but I signed up for it. And signing up for that meant, was it Brighton Eggert? I think it was Brighton Eggert. Or maybe it was a different florist. I don't know. I visited Brighton Eggert and I did this might sound strange, I'm writing a book, and I spent like an hour in their back room just learning a lot about the florist trade. That was where on the cover of Gloom and Doom, I don't know, the murder weapon, the knife that's sticking in the table right there. and that's actually the
Oh.
murder weapon in the story, came from that visit to Brighton Eggert florist, because she wasn't, the florist I was speaking to wasn't using shears. She had this really sharp knife, and it just cut through everything. And rose, I think rose stems, boom, they were gone. You know, it just cut through everything. I thought that, okay, that is a great murder weapon. So that was inspired by that visit there. But I did take a few floral design courses. I don't remember that much of them because there was a lot of Benadryl involved, and gloves, because I get contact dermatitis with the sap from just about any flower. But I learned enough to pull it off. And then when I had enough experience just practicing with real flowers, I had made a few bouquets and other arrangements with silk, which doesn't cause that same kind of reaction, but I could do that at home. So I have done a little bit of flower arranging since using silk. The bouquet on the front was actually taken from a picture of a bouquet that I had made out of silk that I sent them. And the art department converted that and put that on the front. It is similar to the bouquet with all the purple colors that she ended up making in the story. So I did learn a lot about flowers through it. Before I wrote the books, I could probably name about 6 flowers just because they were something I stayed away from.
Well, Barb, I fear we've lost Cheryl. Is she?
No,
Are
I'm
you
here.
there, Cheryl?
I'm here. I
Maybe you are.
just had to step off on video. I had
Okay.
cat issues. So, excuse me. So you learned a lot about flowers. Are you a gardener? I mean, I know you have allergies, but you wouldn't be a gardener, would you?
I did vegetable gardening a number of years ago and really enjoyed it. I haven't done anything recently, no. I remember enjoying it though when I did it. And so when Audrey Bloom, goes to her grandmother's house, and I can't remember which book it's in, and her grandmother's passed away, but she goes to her grandmother's house and she kind of revives the old gardens that she did with her grandmother. Those were memories that I had from gardening. My memories of gardening with my grandparents, I wasn't really allowed in their garden because once when I was about 4, I went to the vegetable garden and I picked all the pretty blooms from all the vegetables that were in the garden. And if anybody gardens vegetables, you know that that's not optimum because all those, blooms that you pick out from the tomato plants, you will no longer get tomatoes there. So yeah, I got in trouble and was no longer allowed in the garden.
Well, your love of flowers does come through in your writing, and it's quite delightful, really. How did you learn so much about the meaning of flowers, or did you? I don't think you made that up. I mean, I think that's interesting.
I bought a book. You could.
I just want to add. I just wanted to add that little story about picking the vegetable blossoms was in the book itself.
Did I put that in the book? Okay.
Yes, you did. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. Grandma May, who Audrey Bloom adores, was patterned a little after my grandmother, who I adored. And I remember spending a lot of time with her. And so that relationship was easy to catch. But as far as the language of flowers, that most of them came from this particular book. It is a reprint of an old book, I believe, or maybe not so old, I don't know. But it went through all kinds of flowers and their meanings, and I kind of stuck with this one. There are different dictionaries, floral dictionaries, that have different meanings, and sometimes I gave more possible meanings, but I found this one really helpful. And it goes both ways. If I was looking for something that I wanted to portray, like grandeur, it also lists what flowers would fit that. So if I was looking for a particular meaning to convey with flowers, I could do that, not just the other way, starting with the flowers to get the meaning. I could start with the meaning and get the flower that would go with it. So it was a good tool.
I love that. I thought that was amazing and interesting.
Well,
So you have so many, I'm sorry?
I was just going to say she's very romantic in her. Audrey Bloom is very romantic in her love of flowers. She tends to think of people and things in terms of the flowers that she loves. So they're involved in her thought process. So when she's walking around, she thinks of, a person might remind her of a particular flower. And even when solving the mystery, as she's making bouquets, she thinks of the meaning of flowers, and that contributes to the thought process as she's logically going through the cases. So it's not who I am, but it is who Audrey is. So it was really interesting to write that as a character.
She was a really interesting character. And the chief of police, I had to laugh, because of his allergies.
Yeah.
You see yourself in him?
Yes. I wrote myself in the chief of police's allergies. So I couldn't give them to Audrey. There's no way she could do her job if she had my allergies. But
you had some very interesting characters and relationships. So the relationship between Audrey and Jenny was very interesting. How did you come up with that, develop that? It was fascinating, kind of high schoolish.
between Audrey and Jenny, in what?
Well, they were estranged, but they used to be best friends. And
Okay, well, I think we all have relationships that we look back on, people that we've lost track of. Some relationships, you were friends for a time and then you lost track of them and you're not quite sure why. And sometimes you are sure why. um, so I think we all have a wealth of relationships, some good, some bad, some wonderful, some toxic, that we can pull from in writing different characters. Not that Jenny is anyone in particular that I knew, but just drawing from our own experiences, really.
when Audrey was so, she didn't seem to have any bad feelings about it. She just kind of opened her arms back to Jenny again, which was really nice.
Well, I think she has a little bit. When the first mystery I wrote that the agent said, I don't think we can have this published. The main character had a lot of bad feelings toward a lot of people. I think I was getting out my angst in writing that first book. I could see why, she didn't think it was published. Everyone has a little angst in the first book. It always comes off as being bitter. So I think there's a lot of I'm not going to say super nicety, but if the character is snarky at all, they end up, or just being, funny in a snarky sense, it ends up coming off as mean. So I've learned to avoid that in characters, because Audrey needs to be nice. She's the main character. People need to like her. I mean, she's not perfect. She has her issues, but she's also not mean-spirited or vengeful or bitter.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. She was romantic and more or less kind, I think. So Jenny's mom,
her mother, though.
Jenny's mom was probably had all the anger that you needed in one book, right?
Yeah, probably.
That was she was very colorful. How did you develop her?
Oh dear, I would have to go back and read the book. I remember, remember this book came out in 2014. It actually came out on April 1st, 2014, which was interesting because when I first got the contract, I thought this is an elaborate, you get this there's a word for it. when you feel like you're not worthy of something. I'm at the point in my life where I have some timers. Sometimes the words come and sometimes they don't, which is great for writing. Because if the words don't come when you're writing, you can read it later and say, oh, and the word pops into your head immediately. Imposter syndrome. That's the word I was looking for. I was so excited that to get published that I thought, oh, this can't be real. And when the contract came back with the date of April 1st, and the publisher's call came not from Penguin, but from Penguin, I thought this cannot be real, but it was. Apparently, they also have Penguin on their caller ID. Instead of Penguin, it says Penquin. So, and then to have it come out on April 1st was absolutely crazy, because it just kept getting in my head that this isn't real. Although I couldn't figure out anyone who put that kind of effort into a practical joke on me. But Jenny's mother, to get back to the question, I remember there's actually a little bit of comedy in there, and she picks out a bouquet that is really, really ugly. It's all brown, and it's all the meanings are really bad for a marriage. And Audrey likes to make these wonderful bouquets based on the Victorian language of flowers that means something to the bride, that means something to the couple, and that will point to a happy union. And the one that Jenny's mother, and she's a bit of a control freak, and she just picks all that out. Some of it may have come, and I could say this now because the woman that I have in mind is now passed away, and she was really dear to me. She was a mother of a friend of mine, but she was a control freak. And when it came time for her daughter to get married, she came into the church with a list of how the whole program should be, dictated everything to the minister. I mean, it just was, it was kind of scary. Um, and so I think there's a little hint of that. So little bits and pieces of characters. Other than that, she was a very dear woman, but that part of it ended up being translated into Jenny's mom.
Yeah, I
Little
almost felt sorry
foreshadowing,
for
too.
her a little bit.
I'm sorry,
I
I
was,
didn't.
I was just saying a little foreshadowing with those awful flowers she chose.
Yes. And a little bit of comedy there too, because it was enough to make Audrey just shake. It just was not her. She was not going to make the bouquet.
Well, I felt a little bad for the mom, just for a little while, but
For a little while.
she was a great character. And Jenny's roommate, how did you develop her? I know this was a long time ago, but I kind of knew right away that she wasn't the best of folk.
I'm trying to figure out what I can say that doesn't give anything away. But Jenny's roommate, I think Jenny's roommate is a bit of an antagonist in the sense that she was a lot of things that Audrey wasn't. And she wasn't a lot of things that Audrey valued. She oh yeah, I am not exactly sure where she came from. I did not base her off of anybody I hated in high school though, so nothing personal there. I think she came out as what she needed to be a good antagonist for Audrey and to fulfill her part in the story.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and what this whole series has meant to you in your writing career.
Well, you know, a lot of writers, you ask them questions like, well, when did you decide to be a writer? And they'll say things like, oh, ever since I picked up a crayon, I wanted to be a writer. And I have to break buck the trend on that because that's not me. It was never in my long range, short range, any range plans. I had a degree in engineering, which was great on paper. But I realized it wasn't too long into engineering school, I realized I really hated engineering. I was good at math and science, so the whole STEM thing, they pushed me toward a career in that. And math and science were great if I could balance them with literature and history and arts and all the other things. But when I got sent to an engineering school, that was, yeah, you had a class that was math, followed by another class that was called something else, but it was basically math, and another class that was a different variety of math. And I think we had one literature class in the entire 5 years I was at the school, because it was a five-year program. And there was no balance to it. And I needed that balance in my life. So I did a number of things after that. I actually used the math and science from engineering school. I taught in a small Christian school for a while. Then my husband took a position as a pastor for a little bit. And so I used what I learned from teaching to work with kids and do other things in the church. I homeschooled my daughter through 12th grade, and she did very well. She is now a nurse at the NICU at Children's Hospital, and she did very well at UB. She got like the outstanding nursing student scholarship to UB, which is another story. And so I did a number of things. And when my daughter went off to college, I had this empty nest kind of situation going on where I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So to compound it all, I had surgery around the same time and was stuck on the couch for a while. And I turned on the TV, like people who are stuck on the couch recovering from surgery tend to do, and fell in love with the TV show Monk, because it was mystery, it was comedy, it was everything I needed. It had wonderfully drawn characters. And it was already in progress. There were like 4 seasons up to that point. So I found all the episodes, watched all the episodes, read the tie-in books that Lee Goldberg wrote, read all of those, still wanted more Monk. Ended up finding the fan fiction that readers had written because I needed more Monk. You know, it was a weird obsessive thing. I think it was the drugs from the surgery, but anyway, such as it is. Needed more Monk. Read all the fan fiction. It was really, really awful, as fan fiction tends to be. And I thought I could do better than this. So I wrote some. And it was really fun. And I didn't realize that writing would be a fun process. But it wasn't very good. So I started collecting books on how to write mysteries, how to write well, how to write fiction to improve what I was doing. Next thing you know, I've developed a whole bunch of followers. And not that this fan fiction was still very great, but people seemed to enjoy it. And I thought, this is really fun. This is just a great hobby. Well, I also read Lee Goldberg's blog. He wrote for Monk. He ran the TV show Diagnosis Murder. And now he has his own publishing company. And he had written a post on fan fiction. I thought, I'm going to see what he has to say about fan fiction. Well, it was not very good. It was basically negative. There might have been an expletive or two involved. But basically the gist of it was, if you think you're so good, why don't you try something original? He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to fan fiction writers. And I thought, try something original. I never thought of that. And just inspired by that insult on a blog, I said, I'm gonna give it a try. I don't know if it'll go anywhere or what will happen to it. So I started a blog and I started a book. The book was about a pastor's wife who solved crime, because at that point, my husband was still working as a pastor. And my blog was how to write that first dreadful novel. And it really was dreadful. it got fixed up a little bit over time, but it really was unpublishable. But I had a lot of fun writing it, and I fixed it up a little bit, and after I'd fixed it up a bit, I sent it to the agent. And next thing I know, well, not next thing I know, it actually took over a year before she responded to me and asked me if I'd be interested in writing a series about flowers. Not that I got that right away. I still had to write a book proposal to send to them. And they had to love it before I could get that contract. And there were other authors who were trying to get that same contract to write that series. So I was happy to get that. But that's a little bit about me and how I got into writing. I took the long way around.
Well, you got there. And
I did.
we really enjoyed your book. Can you tell us how you came up with the name Beverly Allen?
Well, because it was a right for hire, they had a few ideas they wanted in a series, and they wanted to hire someone to write it. It's habitual for them to use a pseudonym, so that if for some reason an author doesn't work out, they can fire them and actually hire someone else to write a book using that same. I did get to pick it though, and I picked it because my name is Barb Early, and if I'm in a big room, or especially a noisy room, and I say, "Hi, my name is Barb Early," I have been called Beverly many times because that's what people hear in a noisy room.
That's so funny. And it worked.
Yeah.
So I think that some of our audience may have questions. Is this when we open it up?
Yeah, we can open up to Q&A if anybody in the audience has any questions for Barbara. Please put them in the Q&A. None right now, though, Cheryl.
Okay. All right. So, oops, sorry, there's the cat. I knew that was going to happen. So how did you, so when are you going to finish? You did the 3 books. Are you going to continue the series?
I did the 3 books. I did Bloom and Doom was the first. The second was For Whom the Bluebell Tolls. And the third was Floral Depravity. And right around the same time, the original contract was for 3 books. And my agent was really sure at that point that they were going to want to renew it. But right around that same point, the publisher was really cutting back on their cozy mystery, on how many cozy mysteries they were publishing. The idea behind it, I guess, was that I guess somebody in probably the marketing department decided that what we want to do to save money is to sell more of the same blockbuster books. So we want to cut out a lot of the other books. And so while my books sold well, the series wasn't renewed. And because it was right for hire, I could not keep writing that series. So that series ended at 3. I then went on and I wrote another series under my real name called The Vintage Toy Shop Mysteries. And I want to show you the cover of the first one because I really love it. Is Death of a Toy Soldier. And this was an idea, this wasn't right for hire. This was my idea. And it centers around a vintage toy shop in a fictionalized version of East Aurora, New York. So the main character there is not a florist. I actually know a little bit more about vintage toys now than I do about flowers. But she is the daughter of the former chief of police of East Aurora. And her father when he retired, he wanted to open this vintage toy shop, and his daughter helps manage it. Only he sometimes forgets. He's not senile, but he misses the action and keeps trying to go police the not so mean streets of East Aurora. And so that's, and he kind of drags her into solving the mysteries with him. And so that was kind of fun to write with a little more local flavor. It's not exactly Easter Aura, because it's fiction and because I didn't want anyone to die in a real business. I put, a few other different businesses in Main Street and changed around a few details simply because, I don't want to trash anybody's business by making it a site of a, grisly murder. So, but there's enough of Easter Aura in there. I did do a signing in Easter Aura that was really fun. And one of the women that came up, she said, I was so excited to get this book. I love the idea of a mystery set in Easter Aura. My father used to be the chief of police. And I thought, oh no. I have no idea whether she liked it or not, but she ended up buying the book. So hopefully she did, recognizing it as a work of fiction, which it is.
So murder mysteries are your genre, right? That's your preferred.
Murder mysteries and cozy mysteries in particular. What separates cozy mystery is cozy mysteries tend to center in small towns. There's usually an amateur sleuth, and they're not a professional. They're not a private eye. They're not a police officer. They're not somebody you expect to be solving murders at all. So there's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek humor in there. It's very much a Murder, She Wrote situation where you got a retired school teacher who really has no business solving murder, but she does. And she does it in a very delightful way. Usually the victim isn't someone you like very much. And usually the killer isn't someone you like very much because, those cozy mysteries tend to be light and they tend to have humor. They're very much a respite from a difficult world. When things are bad, when things are going wrong, to be able to open up a cozy mystery and read of this idyllic small town and these quirky characters and to solve the mystery along with the detective. It's a nice diversion. And cozy mysteries were helpful to me, in a number of times in my life. I remember my mother, when she was sick, she passed away from ALS a number of years back. And I remember toward the end just going to see her and it was a very difficult time. And my relationship with my mother wasn't ideal ever, but that doesn't make her illness and her death any easier to deal with. In fact, it can be harder. But I remember going home and I was reading this long cozy mystery series called the Cat Who books. I don't know if anybody knows of them. They're long established series. The titles all start out with the Cat Who. And it's about this newspaper man named Quillerin. He has a salt and pepper mustache and two Siamese cats named Coco and Yum Yum. And he solves crime in these idyllic small towns. And it just was a place apart from the cruel realities of life. And I think that's what cozy mysteries tend to be for people. In fact, that was one of my goals initially when I started writing is thinking about how much they were a comfort to me is to be a comfort to other people. That happened actually fairly early on. I have a friend who, I think it was my second book in the series. The day it came out, about 11 o'clock that morning, messaged me and said, hey, I really liked that book. And I thought, it's 11 o'clock. It just came out today. You're done already? That was fast. And she said, but you don't understand. She said, not many people know this, but I'm going in for surgery tomorrow. Okay. They had found a mass on her brain and they were going to remove it. And she was scared. And she said, I'm not quite sure how much of me is going to be left. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to read after. So I wanted to read it today. And I thought, I sat there and I wept because here is someone the day before this potentially life-changing event, and she is reading my book for comfort. and it was the fulfillment of everything I wanted to do with writing cozy mysteries. And I just it's nice to actually be there for people who need it. Happy to report that she did well in her surgery. All that she has is a little bit of a straying of one eye, but they just had a baby girl, and I think she's what, 2 now, yeah, and so she's doing quite well. In fact, I borrowed one of her stories with her permission of her wedding for the 3rd book. I guess they had a Dove release that didn't go well. I kind of elaborated on that and put it in the 3rd book in that series, Floral Depravity. But I won't spoil it in case you want to catch that. Yeah.
Well, your book was quite a gift to your friend, and if ever the world needed cozy mysteries, it is now. So thank you for all of your books. I look forward to reading the series. Very nice.
Oh, thank you.
Michaela, do we have any other questions?
The only one that had come in, which Barbara kind of she jumped right into, was talking about East Aurora, because one Judy said she knew that one of your books was set there and she wanted to hear more about it. But unless there's any other details about that book you want to share.
Well, I can tell you. Well, the first book in that series is called Death of a Toy Soldier, and it gets I was so talking about Audrey Bloom that now my brain, Liz, named after the paper doll Betsy McCall. Elizabeth McCall is the main character of this book, and she solves crime with her father, who is the former chief of police, who should be retired. And the first book involves a murder that takes place in their shop. A man who had come in with a box of old toys that he wanted an estimate from, an estimate of the value of, is found dead in their shop at night, and they have no idea how he got there, who killed him. And her father got hit on the head, and he's not much help at all during the first part of the book until he recovers a bit. He's had other health issues in the past, so she's quite worried about him. So that brings her into trying to solve this mystery of Death of a Toy Soldier. There are 2 others in there, in that series. The second book is Murder on the Toy Town Express. And I don't know if you've ever seen the ads for the Western New York toy and train show that takes place at the Hamburg Fairgrounds. Well, I had to move because they had this. Everything in this book is supposed to take place in East Aurora. I had to build a event center in East Aurora for this toy and train fair to take place. But this involves the death of a comic book dealer who kind of falls from the rafters onto someone's elaborate train layout below. And if you ever talk to these people who have these elaborate layouts, they were all sorry. Everyone in that building was sorry for the guy whose layout was destroyed. No one really cared too much about the poor idiot who fell on them. So, but Liz cares. And she and her father end up figuring out who done that one. And there's a 3rd book in the series called Death of a Russian Doll, which involves the murder of a character that is introduced in the end of the 2nd book, who is a Russian immigrant and married to another character in the book, and who is found dead in her beauty shop. She's a beautician, with her strangled with the cord from a hairdryer. And Liz really knows her husband better than she knows the victim. But her husband, because the significant others of the victims are often the first suspects, he is a suspect, so she's out to clear him in Death of a Russian Doll. So there are 3 books in that series, and that series is also capped at 3. So I was working on a couple other things. I'm not quite sure which way I want to go. Pandemic kind of derailed my writing efforts. It's hard for me to be creative when there's a lot of stress in the world. So now that things are evening out, maybe I'll pick that up again where I left off.
Well, before we let you go, I have a few comments I'd like to ask or share or whatever. And the first is, I just love the beginning, that whole idea that Audrey had such a great success rate with the weddings that she prepared the flowers for, that they all were happily ever after occasions, and she had a 0 divorce rate. So I thought that was really very clever. And I love all the various characters, because I love a good character in life as well as in novels. So I just want to thank you for the variety of characters that you seated in the book. And they were all suspect at one point in time, but we ultimately found out who the real mischievous, no good ended up being, the whodunit character. And then I learned 2 things today. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was about to say that character is very important, because people come back to a series. They may have liked the mystery, but people usually come back to a series because they like the characters. So to have characters that they like, characters that interest them, continuing characters, sometimes a budding romance, people, come back to see, I wonder if that'll work out. And so characters are what really drive a cozy mystery series. So
the 2 things I learned tonight was, number one, I didn't know that cozy mystery was a subset of mystery. So now I do. And the other fact is, I didn't know a publisher had a concept in mind and looked for authors to, I never knew that. I always thought the authors were alone in their bedrooms typing away and then praying that a publisher, sending their manuscripts out and hoping someone would take a look.
And it often works that way, but publishers that have been around for a while, they have a lot of idea people, and they will occasionally come up with an idea, say, hey, this book about flowers sold, we should have another book about flowers. And they'll come up with, it's not a lot, it's not a whole book, it's just a small concept of what they would like to see in a book that they think would appeal to their readers, because writers like to write the books of their heart. Publishers like to sell books. So sometimes they don't always mesh. So if a publisher thinks a book will sell, they'll often hire writers to write them. And a lot of mystery writers, particularly cozy mystery writers, actually start out that way. Their first series is right for hire. That's why
I never knew that.
A lot of cozy mystery writers have a lot of different identities.
It's always a good day when you learn something new. And then I just want to talk briefly about the whole kind of mysterious nightclub scene out in the abandoned building, and how it connected back to the father, and how you came up with that and what that was all about. I thought it was really fun.
Right.
I wanted to go there. In fact, it was so much fun.
In addition to character, setting is important, because the most basic definition of a novel, back when I was, reading a lot to learn how to write, I remember someone basically defined a novel as interesting people doing interesting things in interesting places. And so to come up with interesting characters and then develop an interesting plot, and then to have interesting settings so that it's not always in the same place, that moves around. There's a variety of places, and these places need to be, they can be outside the norm, unusual places that people want to go. And just the whole mysterious thing. I think when I wrote it, and when they pulled up and they're parked outside and people are going in and they don't know what's going on in there, I remember writing that, and I didn't have a clear picture in my head what was going on inside there either. So it was a surprise to me too when they opened up, when they finally got in there and saw what was happening. Trying to figure out where that was.
You took us to a lot of different settings.
I
Back to Grandma
tried.
May's, to the greenhouse, and the mystery around that.
Yeah, and just throughout the book, the main setting in the town is very important because a town is almost a character in a cozy mystery series. So Ramble, Virginia is pretty much a character in this whole mystery series. So you don't want to travel too far out of that area because people want this small town setting. So you bring in interesting people and interesting events. In book 2, For Whom the Bluebell Tolls, there's actually a reality TV show that has come to town to film in Ramble, Virginia. So that adds some new element. Even though everyone who has an Audrey Bloom bouquet has remained married, not all of them actually survive through the ceremony. There's a few that don't quite make it through the ceremony.
Her reputation is tarnished.
Yeah. Well, no, her record stands because they didn't quite get there.
Oh. Well, I'm looking forward to reading those.
Yeah, Floral Depravity, actually, the third one actually takes place at a medieval history encampment that takes place in the fields surrounding Ramble. And so they're all out. There's a bunch of people out there dressed in all their medieval garb, and it's actually interesting because there is a medieval language of flowers that's different from the Victorian language of flowers. And I don't remember how much I got into that in this one, but I had a lot of fun taking them slightly out of their element, but you still want all the other main characters involved in the story. So,
well, I'm anxious to read the second 2 books in the series and pick up the other series. So I want to really thank you, Barb, for spending time with us this evening. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank Cheryl for facilitating. You had some great questions, Cheryl. And I want to thank all our guests for being with us tonight. I do want to let them know that in May, we have 2 books. On May 5th, Nickel City Storm Warning with author Gary Earl Ross. And we have a special book launch, Political Tribalism in America, How Hyper-Partisanship Dumbs Down and How to Fix It Up by Timothy J. Redman. So I'm sure that will be a very lively discussion. But before we go, I want to remind everyone that tomorrow night is Second Friday, and I'm going to have Michaela let you know what's happening tomorrow night at the museum.
Yes, so tomorrow is Second Friday. We have a bunch going on in the museum. We have the exhibition opening of Idris Wajad's piece, The Bridge, which consists of not only some installation work, but also a 400-pound Cuban chain link necklace that is in the rotunda. So that'll be a very interesting, can't wait to see that. They've been working all week really hard installing that. Education, we're going to be doing some drop-in art making. We're going to be looking at Wilhelmina Godfrey's weavings and doing some artwork inspired by that. And we're going to be in the boardroom upstairs. And in the auditorium, there's going to be a screening of Buffalo's Black Art Renaissance with Doug Ruffin, and he'll be there answering Q&A questions in the auditorium. And that is from, I believe, 5:30 to 7. So.
Thank you, Michaela, and thank you for all your technical help as always. And thank you, everyone, and we'll see you again soon. And Barbara, we'd love to have you come back and visit us again.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.